Hello?
Hey Matt, good
Hey,
morning.
dude. How you doing?
I'm good. Waking up. This is a little early for me, but I should be okay. I'm gonna see. Sorry, hold on one sec. I'm gonna see. I'm in the car. I'm gonna see if I can set up the audio to play through the speakers so my speaker can pick it up a little bit better.
Oh, I got you.
Bluetooth. So I remember we were messaging before, and you said you were looking at getting a job at where again? I forget. A Home Depot or something like that.
FedEx. FedEx.
FedEx. Like
Yeah,
working.
I'm working as a delivery driver right now.
Okay. Nice. How do you like it?
Putting in about, well, it puts food on.
I'd rather be working in my shop, but just not bringing in enough right now. So taking on a second job until business picks up.
What kind of shop do you run?
Oh, I own a Cerakote applicator shop. I apply a ceramic finish on firearms and auto parts and stuff. Next month, we're going to be upgrading our FFL license to a manufacturer. We're going to start building guns and see if that brings business up.
You said powder coating. What did you say it was?
No, Cerakote.
Spirit coat.
It's a ceramic finish. It
Okay.
was It was originally designed to go on firearms.
And it just protects them. What does it do for the gun exactly?
Oh, it does all kinds of stuff. It's basically a ceramic, so of course it's going to protect the surfaces from any further rusting and things like that. It's I'd have to say about the third strongest coating you can put on a firearm. The second strongest being nickel boron coating, and the number one strongest being that plasma copper adhesion thing. And both of those two coatings are really only meant for going in the bore, in the chamber, on the bolt. It's not really meant for whole weapon use. Cerakote is meant for whole weapon use. And when you put it inside on the moving parts, you've got two ceramic surfaces that are now self-lubricating itself. So once you put Cerakote in there, you actually don't have to lubricate the weapon other than the bore, because you can't put Cerakote in the bore or on springs.
How do you spell that? How do you spell that word?
Let's see if I can remember. Cerake. Wait, no. Crap. I'm dyslexic. I need to physically be seeing it. Give me a second here.
No,
I'm
it's all
gonna
good.
type it out and then tell you.
My buddy that plays chess is kind of dyslexic too, and
Okay.
he always has problems trying to
It's like
trying to
I can
study.
spell stuff. I can type it out, but if I try to verbally spell it out, it all gets jumbled up.
Yeah.
Uh, Cerakote. The name of the company that developed it is called NIC Industries.
Okay. And
I'm
it's a
I'm a
ceramic.
certified I'm a certified Cerakote applicator with NIC Industries.
NIC.
Yeah.
And what would you call it? Just like a finish? What would you call it in general
It is
terms?
it's a finish. I'm refinishing firearms. I have to remove the finish that's on there. I have to go all the way down to bare metal using aluminum oxide. If you just blast it off with, say, glass beads or sand or anything of that like, all it does is dimple the surface. ceramic doesn't adhere on its own. It needs a gnarled, chaotic surface to adhere to. It seeps into that surface, hardens, and then stays.
Okay,
So
it's gonna have a hard
you have
time.
to use aluminum oxide.
So it has a hard time like interacting with very many other surfaces.
It doesn't interact at all.
Not at all.
It doesn't react with surfaces, so it doesn't adhere on its own. You have to have that gnarled surface that aluminum oxide gives it in order for it to grip and grab onto it.
And so
But once it's there, it's not going anywhere.
You would use aluminum oxide to remove it. Is that what you were saying, or what would
Yeah, in a blast cabinet, you're blasting it with aluminum oxide dust.
Okay. This is new to me, so I'm trying to mentally make a little picture.
I got you. Yeah, well, the whole process is, if it's a used weapon that's been cleaned and oiled for years and stuff, I have to put it in an acetone tank and let it soak for a little bit, get all that oils and gunk off of it, clean it. Then I put it in the blast cabinet, blast off the surface, completely bare metal surface. I can also do polymer parts, but I have to do that at a lower pressure because, the blast cabinet, the blast gun will just go straight through polymer if it's at the same pressure that I use for metal parts. But I do coat polymer parts all the time, that's not really for a protective coating. That's more for an aesthetic look. The customer wants it to match the rest of the weapon or wants to change the color in some way or something like that.
Do you do knives at all?
Oh, I've done knives, yes.
Yeah.
Basically, anything that can be baked at above 150 degrees can have a Cerakote finish. Glass, no. But anything metal, polymer can have a Cerakote finish. I dare say it, I think I'm the only one in the state of Louisiana that's actually doing graphics. Everybody else doesn't want to mess with graphics. They just want to do solid colors.
And how does that work? How does that work with?
Well, it's a layering system. It's extremely temperamental. This is not a cheap process. You gotta, first, when you're putting the first layer on, the first layer goes on normal thickness. You got to get that protective layer on. Then it comes in over 100 different colors. You can put up to 5 layers on top of that base layer. But the next layers are extremely thin, just enough to get the color saturation that you want. So just enough to coat the layer underneath it, and that's all you're putting. A proper coating, a proper application, you don't feel any layers where they transition. You don't feel any ridges or anything. It feels like one single seamless layer.
Uh-huh. And how would you manage that?
And that's very hard. It's very hard to do. This is all done with a spray gun, all done by hand with a spray gun. And to get the designs, you can go the freehand route or you can go the stencil route. I've done both, depending on the job.
Are you a gun guy yourself? Is that how you kind of got into this, or how did you?
Oh yeah, it's kind of a family thing. My grandpa was a gunsmith. I've lived around guns most of my life. I'm a gun guy.
You said Louisiana?
Yeah.
That's where you live?
Yeah.
Okay. Louisiana. Yeah, well, welcome everybody. welcome Matt to the show. I know I didn't really introduce you or anything. We kind of just usually jump into it. Um,
So good.
but you're I guess what you could call an experiencer, right? You've been. I listened to a little bit of your. What was the name of that show?
Which one? I've been on a few.
With the two guys.
Oh, Reality Brief.
Yeah, Reality
Yeah, with
Brief.
Don and Dan.
Yeah, I listened to a little bit of that one. That one was very interesting.
I've been on there a couple times.
Yeah. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, you can. It's really up to you. Whatever you feel comfortable with sharing. If you'd like to talk about something.
Well, usually I just let you ask whatever questions you want.
Okay.
Lead the conversation wherever you want to lead it.
Right.
And I'll just follow and bring up whatever memories come with it.
Okay, so let's start off with how old are you? Like, are you mid 30s? I'd put you at like mid 30s.
I'll be 33 in June.
Okay, you're close to my age. I'm gonna be 34 in July.
Gotcha. Cool deal.
So as far as like secret space program stuff, I know the word itself is sort of a hot button thing for the community, and there's a lot of information flying around about what it is or isn't. And I think also, as far as our own government is concerned, what it even means, like what it means in practical terms, like if Trump is talking about building a space force, well, how would you say that it's appropriate to even think about that word space in general, or secret space program, in terms of just somebody, or like a regular citizen, trying to understand what it means?
Well, I'd have to say it's not a single conglomerate. It's different factions out there. They don't all always get along. Some of them have mutual goals and will team up temporarily, but they're not all, one single umbrella, like that term wants to infer.
Mm-hmm.
But they do barter with each other a lot, and most of what they barter is human assets, and I mean people. They will barter slave labor, basically. Slave labor, adrenochrome, anything having to do with the trafficking of humans is basically the majority of the barter system.
And I guess another sort of apt question would be, as far as I know the community likes to kind of assert that humans are sort of receiving the short end of the stick in terms of interdimensional or extra dimensional interaction. Would you say that's true, or would you say that's just the way that it's been colored in order to keep people suppressed and in fear mode?
Well, could you reword the question a little bit? I'm not really understanding where you're going with it.
As far as like the relationship between other races, like other species of being, like the Draco, for instance, or whoever else is out there, in terms of the others' relationship with humans, would you say it's just this sort of they are the master, we are the slave race kind of thing, or do you feel like that's something that's just being propagated to keep fear going?
I think that's been the way it's been in our past, and I think we're in a kind of transition right now since we started going out there and building our own fleets and whatnot. We've been growing in power and authority as a mass group,
Mm-hmm.
and the other races are still seeing us as, slaves, or even just not slaves, but simply beneath them.
Mm-hmm.
In most cases, with specifically the ones that are interacting with us. And keep in mind, there's a whole host of races out there that don't interact with us at all, but they have reasons for that. The ones that are interacting with us are the ones that have been trying to enslave us the entire time. And the others, the reason they don't interact with us, it's more of like the Star Trek Prime Directive type of thing.
Like where you're not allowed to
They're
interfere.
trying to let us, do our own thing and build up to their level before they start to interact. Well, then you've got these other races that just want to conquer and subdue us. We're the next one in line to be conquered, basically.
Uh-huh. Okay, and in terms of how you would travel, because I have a couple different notions in my head of how this would happen. I know the thing that has always been pushed is that like you have to get into a spaceship, or you have to get into a some physical method of conveyance, and that's going to bring you to the other aspects of the multiverse or something. Is that, or is it just you strap on a helmet and you travel via the mind, and it's something like going into the inner mental multiverse? How would you say the travel is happening mostly?
Bit of both. There's the technological route of entering a ship and just traveling faster than light in different ways. There's temporal dimensional drives where they just kind of blink you between points. Then there's the wormhole network, which is a naturally occurring thing. It's like a web that connects every solar system and then in a galaxy, and then there's nodes that link up to the adjacent galaxies and so on and so forth.
How is your main method of travel in the military, I guess you would call it, whichever aspect you're in?
The services I remember working alongside Germans. I remember wearing a Nachtwaffen uniform, working on German ships. The one ship I remember starting out as a pilot, and I've since gained more memories, and I've had direct interfaces with that altar in real time. These days, I don't know if he's second in command or a captain of a ship, but I definitely felt a kind of authority, more responsibility on his shoulders.
From him?
Yeah.
And you met him in physicality, like in this life?
No. It's more of a linking of the minds, and we start being able to see through each other's eyes. When you have, they can't stop that because technically we're one being. When you put a child through torture for the sake of fracturing his mind and creating multiple personalities, technically speaking, it's one personality that's been fractured into many.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you take one of those consciousnesses out of that mind, put it in a clone body, they're still linked on a mental level. It's like the whole twin syndrome thing where, the twins just know what's going on with each other. It's kind of like that. And it was completely accidental and spontaneous. I was simply in a very calm state. I was laying on my recliner. I was like 3 or 4 days into a water fast. And so that probably had a factor to play. And I was just laying down, resting in the recliner. And the thought popped in my head, just a simple thought. If these guys are alternate personalities and clone bodies and not me physically going through these services on multiple occasions, would they be out there right now, and what would they be doing? It was just a passing thought.
Uh-huh.
Suddenly, I'm looking through someone else's eyes. And when that happens, they're looking through your eyes.
So
He was
like
looking
switch?
through my eyes.
So you just switch around?
There's no control of the other body. It's just you're now perceiving the other person's sensory perception.
Just like a viewing.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I was walking down a corridor. I was wearing a uniform that I had no memory of until that moment. And it was more like a gray camo. It was baggier than other uniforms I remember. Extremely comfortable. I remember, and this was the first time I had seen a smart glass pad, because in all of the memories I've recovered, I had not seen a smart glass pad in my memories. You know, people were always talking about these smart glass pads, and I'm like, well, I don't have any memories of those pads, you know.
What is
tell.
that? Is that like an advanced iPod or something?
It's like an advanced iPad that's clear. It's a computer in your hand, just like a tablet, and it's 100% transparent. And you touch it and it lights up.
So it just looks like a fully clear piece of glass, like fully clear piece of glass. Okay, I can.
Yeah,
imagine.
it's more like a plexiglass type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically the technology would be laminated circuits using transparent materials for all the circuitry, just layer after layer until you get the thickness of the tablet, and now you have a computer that works.
Wait, are you saying they're somehow camouflaging the circuitry so you can't see it at all? No.
No, they're using different materials, and I've researched this after I learned about that. There are different kinds of chemical compounds, different types of elements that can be used in place of what we're using in our desktops that are simply transparent.
Mm.
And they can be used in a kind of 3D printer setup and have one layer printed out, then the next, and the next, until you get, a complete screen, which is a computer in and of itself.
And
the technology is actually out there in public today, in Japan mostly.
Would you say from your memories of these glass pads that they're more opaque, like you can see through it but you can't see very clearly, or is it just like a crystal clear like sheet of glass that when you touch it the images appear?
There may be a slight opaqueness. I think it's mostly clear. You can see through it. You can see on the other side of it, and then once you touch it, it does go opaque somewhat. And I think that's more of the visual screen doing that.
Right. The Nachtwaffen, do you know how to spell that?
Let's see here. Nacht.
Nacht.
Waffen. is WAFFEN, I think.
Okay. And is any of this that you have memories of, is any of it publicly acknowledged here, or is it all just supposed to be
Well,
classified?
I started asking friends that I know are in the same service about, like, for instance, the uniform. I'm like, what's up with this uniform? And all I did was ask the gray camo uniform to a friend of mine and said, what's up with the gray camo uniform? And he comes right back with exactly what I was thinking, that, oh, yeah, it's the most comfortable uniform they have. And what he told me was, it's a tactical uniform for onboard ship use when you're going into combat and you run the risk of being boarded. You can move more freely. They believe that the whole gray camo look actually allows you to somewhat blend in closer with the corridor surroundings. So it's a little harder to pick you up, when you're having to do shipboard combat.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So do you have any active memories of like combat or fighting at all?
Somewhat. With that particular altar, I have more than one altar I'm remembering, and I had no idea that memory that I've had since I was a kid of being in that big dark room with the reptilian charging at me. It was basically like a test. It was an evaluation of my skills. I had no idea. That was a completely different altar. I started getting memories of that, of that particular altar. Started getting more memories of him after speaking with Will Glover. I found out that he and I served together on the other side, out there with that altar.
How many altars do you think you have? Have you ever tried to make a count?
The ones that I'm remembering, so far I'm remembering maybe 3 or 4, but I just have the strong sense that there are more than that.
Can you tell me a little bit about how your life was pre having sort of memories resurfacing of this activity, I guess otherworldly activity? Can you describe to me how your life was before that, and then how the transition was?
Well, it was last year, I'd say, around this time. It's been about 11 months since I actually accepted the fact that I was in the programs, or that I have altars actively in the programs. And before that, it had been about 3 years that I finally accepted the fact that I had even been abducted. Before that, I was literally running from those facts. Mm-hmm. The symptoms have been there my whole life. The absolute terror of being in the dark in my room, trying to go to sleep, fear of my closet, to the point where I ripped the doors off my closet. Closet has to be completely wide open. The thought of having to run just to go to the bathroom, having to run to the light switch and every light switch to turn everything on before I can even go to the bathroom. The feeling of always being watched. Mm-hmm. As my earliest memories when I was little, I had always been, practically addicted to horror movies. I loved horror movies. And they made me laugh. I never understood why, but it was funny to me. Them trying to scare me, but it just wasn't working.
Uh-huh.
And so those weren't a problem with me. But my earliest memories of seeing a gray on the TV, I would be terrified, and I'd be awake for days, unable to sleep, absolutely petrified as a kid. I've been having dreams my whole life since I was little of grays coming into the house and taking me in. I simply wasn't accepting the idea that I had been abducted. I wasn't acceptive of all that. I believed that it was all just in my head until it started happening right in front of my eyes, until the memories exited my dreams and started coming back in while I was fully awake in front of my eyes. It's like I'm experiencing it all over again.
Was your family and friends aware of it at all? I know in most situations of people I've talked to, there's usually some sort of hush-hush, or else the family are handlers as well, so they can't really say a lot. But did you have any support from your family?
Well, my family's asked me to keep them out of it, but I can tell you I've had a lot of support from my direct family.
That's good. That's definitely a good thing. A lot of people don't have it, even if you're not, having active memories of being in some space fleet or something. Just apprehending the reality is difficult if you don't have support.
I can tell you this much. I'm not the only one in my family this is going on with since birth. I'm just the only one who decided to come forward.
Mm-hmm.
So outside of that, I'm keeping my family out of it.
Was your motives for coming forward? Can you go into that a little bit?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I didn't hear you right.
Can you go into your motives and reasons for coming and speaking publicly about this?
Well, I wasn't going to at first come out, but I felt I needed to be part of that community of people that are helping others that are going through this. I mean, it's extremely health problem inducing, holding all this in my whole life.
Right.
And it's induced a lot of medical problems. And I just don't want to see other people go through all that. And so I thought maybe if I had the strength, gained the strength and set the example and showed that I can open up and talk about this and it'll be okay. And even if it's just with my family, there was a huge weight that comes off my shoulders when I did that. And I just, it was more of like a giving back to the community that helped me.
Right.
There was a bunch of people that helped and supported me through all this, through learning what was going on, coming to terms with it all, finding out I'm not as crazy as I thought I was. And I wanted to give back to that community and help others go through the same thing,
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a strange situation from my perspective because there's so much disjointed. Just this world or this life is so obfuscated, I guess, from like everyone is on some level of deception or distorted everything, like internally and externally, even externally as far as what the society pretends to be, as far as what it seems to be underneath the surface, those two don't really correlate. And then trying to find some sense of community within that has always been difficult for me to even fathom how you would go about doing it. Can you speak on
Right.
that at all? Like, where can humans have community if we truly are like this you know, intersectional dimensional intersection of many worlds, and we're pretending to just simply be like Earth that doesn't, and nothing else exists, you know? Like, where, how would you say community would happen within that dichotomy?
Uh, well, I think you're getting a little too broad there
Yeah.
with your questioning, but trying to narrow it down. Basically, community is going to happen because it's a natural state for us. You know, we gravitate towards like-minded people. We gravitate towards people who have experienced the same experiences we have. It's a survival mechanism. So it's natural for humans to do that. So no matter how much people fight against it, it's going to happen regardless in some form or another, in some place or another. It's just going to continue happening no matter how many times the powers that be try to stop it.
Yeah.
Humans will never stop trying to come together
Right,
and
right.
support each other.
We're very resilient, even with. I mean, there's so much going on in everywhere, in the health scene, and you know, in psychological sort of attacks, and then how people are dealing with that, and then to add to that, there's the thing of just, if someone has been through a real experience, you know, and you know they come out about it, and whether it's seeing ghosts or being a part of a space program or whatever, like the medical society has set up a bunch of words that you can peg those people with, and then you know put them somewhere else where they're not being as loud. You know, you can put them in a psychic ward, or you can put them in, you know, you can just remove them. You could say they're crazy and put them in jail, or you know, there's lots of, not say they're crazy and put them in jail, but there are lots of ways you can manipulate the terminology to just make the person feel insane, and then they get removed from that possibility of community.
Right. The people that do stuff like that, you've got the controlling factor that knows what's going on and is trying to hush it and trying to control the situation. And you got those that don't know what's going on and think they're the ones in control, that are simply going along with it out of a sense of fear of what they don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
and a fear of what they can't relate to, or a fear of what they don't want to relate to.
Right. Yeah. How would you say our military and our Air Force and everything here relates to the extra dimensional aspects? Because like, is everyone just time traveling and going into wormholes in and out of this realm? Because like, it seems very quiet on the surface to me.
Well, it's because they do it outside of view of the public. But there are wormholes on Earth leading to different parts of the planet, leading to other planets in the solar system, other points in space between those planets. It's a grid that is actually it can be mapped. The movements of the wormhole entrances and exits can be actually mapped and timed, and NASA has publicly hinted to that in somewhat, because they publicly announced that they discovered micro wormholes at our ionosphere that lead directly to the surface of the sun, that are constantly blinking in and out of existence. Well, they're just trying to hint. It's basically like a soft disclosure. They're hinting to stuff that is already old news in the more secretive parts of the government.
Miniature wormholes that port you directly to the sun in the ionosphere?
Yeah. It's micro wormholes. We're talking about like a few millimeters to an inch in size, and they're noticing that radiation, some of the radiation that the way it's configured at the surface of the sun is showing up right there at the ionosphere of Earth. And they've got some satellites in orbit that pass through these points in space and detect all this and measure stuff now. Well, this is all old news. They're saying that they just discovered this a couple years ago, and no, this was decades ago.
And you're saying they're just trying to lead up to a more full disclosure, or are you saying they're just seeding the subconscious to let the people not freak out so much?
They're seeding the subconscious so that when things are revealed, it'll be like a non-event.
Yeah.
That's what all these sci-fi shows are. They're seeding the culture. They're seeding the subconscious of the minds. All this technology that's booming. You've got 3D printers that can now print organs. You've got the ability to make, Japan is already making smart glass pads in public view.
Yeah.
They don't call them smart glass pads. They're transparent phones and tablets.
I see.
They're fully transparent TV screens and computer monitors, fully transparent phones and tablets. The technology already exists in the public view. They're just slowly seeding the minds with all of this. NASA's talking about how they have successfully figured out how to exceed the speed of light with a contained ship-like structure, but they've only done it to a few molecules in the lab.
You don't think that's the...
They don't have the energy to do it on a mass scale. All this is a seeding of the subconscious mind leading up to the real shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like they're, whatever is let out to the public is kind of silly, because everybody, the public did get dumbed down, or else most of them are robots or drones or NPCs or whatever, because the public doesn't give a shit about anything. They literally just go in the same circles every single day, and I don't even know.
And that was their intent.
Yeah.
They did that. They nudged here, pushed there to guide the public to where they wanted the public to be, to what they wanted the public to do, and to how they wanted the public to act. They wanted a mass public of mindless worker drones. So they've been slowly, seeding things over time to turn the public into that.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty wildly successful.
I'm talking about our own government. It's our own government that's been doing this.
But they're also under the influence, though, right? They're under the influence of these external forces as well, right?
Yes. Since the inception of America, this isn't something recent in the last century.
Mm-hmm.
This is older than the existence of America.
Would you say the banking system is also extra-dimensional in origin?
I'd say the people that founded the banking system hundreds of years ago had a more esoteric foundation, more Satanic Foundation, and what they're really worshiping are these Draco beings, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Whoops. Maybe that's that. Okay. Hey, Matt?
Hey, we got cut out there.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like it looked like your number was calling me even though we were still on the phone. And then I tried to hang up on the incoming call, and then it hung up the actual conversation.
Oh, wow.
It was very strange appearing. But you were talking about something about Draco's.
Oh, yeah. That was really the end of my sentence, is what they're worshiping are these Draco beings. Some of them on higher dimensions that have gone to higher dimensions are now, more energetic bodies, capable of doing more, seeing more, influencing more. That's really the demonic beings that we're interacting with.
Yeah, like the more heavy, like overlord consciousness, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you feel about the whole idea that these beings that have decided to play out the negatively oriented, uh, you know, tendency? Do you? Because I've heard and I also feel that they can only go to a certain level of frequency before like they can't even pass any further because they've been holding on to such a low like manipulative frequency. Do you feel like that's true in some case where they can't, where basically the human that wishes to be a pure or true to themselves or whatever can basically blast past where these negatively oriented beings would be able to go?
Well, even though I can't say for sure because I don't have first account witnessing or experience in that matter, I'm tending to believe towards that. The whole point of existence of all of creation is to move back towards the Creator. And if you can't accept and love the rest of creation, the rest of the Creator and all the Creator's makeup, then, you're gonna hit a wall, I would think, and not be able to move any further.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my logical mind. That's kind of where my logical mind goes when it thinks about stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. It does seem, it seems reasonable because like I think about it very logically as well. I don't, I've never been really sucked into sort of like fantasy thinking, even though, to me the world itself is just like this crazy sci-fi novel if you actually get into it. But like I still think very logically, and something like for me to frame my thoughts around beings that sort of just like torture and use and manipulate and eat or just consume other beings like viciously and without remorse or care or compassion. Like there's a part of me that says, God or the universe, the multiverse, all of existence at its totality allows that. It allows everyone and everything to be as it is, but there still has to be stopgaps and there still has to be checks and balances to an extent to where one like really loud kid, at the party can't just ruin it for all the other kids for all of eternity. Like, there has to be some thing where eventually someone comes in and they're like, all right, you're done here. You know, we're going to move you over here. We're going to rehab you, or, you know, you get this part of the universe and everyone else gets to play over in this corner. You know, something like that.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts. You know, I don't have any like
Right.
hard, fast knowing of it, but just seeing and listening to people talk about things, it feels reasonable that, you know, you can do what you do, but there's going to be repercussions and you will be contained to an extent.
What you're talking about is karma. The actual definition of karma.
Yeah. Yep. And I suppose that the whole what goes around comes around, for that to like complete in a lot of cases probably takes hundreds of years, millions of years. I don't know how long it takes, but especially if you've...
Yeah, I really don't know for certain. I just kind of see that it does exist, how it works, and the time frames that go about it. I really don't know and can't say.
Mm-hmm. Are you, you mentioned going back to the Creator. Can you talk a little bit about your beliefs on spirituality, or your gut feelings on that?
I've kind of come to a change in my belief system. I was born and raised in a Christian family, Christian household. What they specifically believe, I've kind of changed, but the gist of it is still the same. I believe in the Creator. I don't believe in the true Creator being some dude on a throne. If people have seen that, it's probably another being that was once where we are now and is now much further along the path towards the Creator. But, you know, just another being just like us. He's just far further along the path, more evolved, more advanced, higher up in the dimensions, and just appears to be a, you know, God to us. What I see actual God, actual Creator, well, I'll kind of put it like this. I see the anode-cathode kind of relationship between the Creator and the creation. The way, excuse me, the way I see it is the Creator wanted to experience itself in many different ways at one point. So it decides to split itself in half. It has a male half and a female half, and the only thing that defines that as male half, female half is the male half is irradiating itself, its creative life essence, outward like a radiation, like light from itself, while the female half absorbs that and condenses it and reforms it in many different unique ways, and it's almost like, imagine a beam that's now condensing, slowly condensing as it gets closer and closer back to its original source, its original irradiating source. That's how a cathode and a anode work. It's not a one-way system. It's actually two ways. Tesla talked about that.
That's a beautiful
so
way of thinking about
analogy.
it. I like that analogy.
We are literally the condensation of that life force, that light. When we talk about the ether, you know, creating these vibrations, these self-sustaining standing waves that become matter, that matter coalesces to become objects, to become life. And then that life, as it moves up in the densities, it becomes denser and denser, and that life changes. and the whole spectrum of the electromagnetic field on the other end of that barrier into the next density is at a higher density. I don't think there's different forms of energy. I don't think there's different fields, spectrums. I think there's one single spectrum. The electromagnetic spectrum is just one small bit of it. And when you reach a frequency, like say the frequency you get at the speed of light, there's a boundary, but it's not a solid barrier. When it transitions past that boundary, it is increasing in density into a spectrum that we are incapable of perceiving or even interacting with. And then as it moves to the next and the next and the next, and see, I don't believe in the idea of different dimensions. I do believe in the idea of different densities.
So you feel like
when you get into the idea of dimensions, you're talking about parallel realities, copies of each other. When you're talking about transitioning and evolving, you're talking about densities.
Are you saying that to get past the speed of light barrier, you have to get more dense? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's an automatic thing. On the other side, the electromagnetic spectrum and light itself is at a higher density.
So it's more compact, you're saying?
Yes.
It's more heavier. That's interesting. I always thought it would be the opposite of that.
No. Not heavier. Not like neutron star kind of condensation. I'm talking about vibrational wave densities.
Like faster, you're saying? The
electromagnetic spectrum.
The waves are closer together.
Vibrational. Yes.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
There reaches a density there that it no longer can interact with things on the other side of that barrier. They simply pass through each other. They're at a different. The frequencies themselves are offset from each other, so they're just passing through each other. And all of our senses and all of our technologies are designed to interact with objects. So they can only detect what they can interact with.
Yeah, so by that theory, basically, it would be like the Russian nesting doll thing, right? Like where all the universes are within each other, but you have to change the frequency in order to like change the tuner, and then all of a sudden you just pop. Same space-time location, but the frequency is different, so you'd see a whole different scene going on. Yes.
And funny thing is scientists are now starting to admit that the pineal gland actually does that.
That's good.
There are piezoelectric and photovoltaic crystals inside the pineal gland.
Oh yeah.
And when they get hit by certain frequencies that are outside of our electromagnetic spectrum, they actually light up, and people are discovering this. They actually light up. So the pineal gland, as the ancients called it, the eye, the third eye, doesn't need to be on the surface like our optical eyes do. The light that it's seeing passes through everything.
Yeah. I think they're also saying that they saw like whatever the receptacle is inside the actual eye. Like they're saying that it almost looked like an eyeball. Is that what you're saying too? Like it almost looked like an object capable of visual sight.
There are receptors in the pineal gland that mirror the optical eyeballs.
Yeah. That
are designed to pick up the specific wavelengths that are coming off of these piezoelectric and piezovoltaic crystals inside there. And so the crystal vibrates at torsion field frequencies and gives off light. And the receptors inside the pineal gland read that light. and interprets it. And then it gets sent off to the brain. It actually connects to the same parts of the brain that your eyeballs are connected to. So when you're seeing ghosts and stuff, you're seeing torsion field frequencies in your pineal gland that are being, it's a natural organ, a natural system that we were born with. We were just brainwashed into believing that that's all witchcraft and that's all, too far out there. People like that are just crazy,
Right.
seeing things.
Torsion field frequency. So basically, you're saying.
Torsion fields are the same. It's the same spectrum as part of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's simply a higher frequency range, and you can literally prove this with organite. Organite is a material that is 50% some sort of organic matter, like a resin, 50% metallic, like some sort of metal, like copper or something.
Uh-huh.
And it's the same makeup as the human body. You've got organic and metallic objects in the human body. Well, organic chemical compounds absorb the electromagnetic frequency. They actually absorb it like a sponge. Metal compounds reflect it. So when you've got a metal wire with electrical current traveling through it, it's not absorbing it, it's reflecting it towards its surface.
Really?
And causing that, it's absorbing the surrounding space, causing it to, not absorbing, it's causing the space around it to condense at its surface, which gives off the simulation of a current passing through the wire. But it's actually passing through the atmosphere surrounding the wire.
Huh.
But organite does it in the way that the human body does it. The organic compounds absorb electromagnetic frequencies, and the even dispersion of metallic powders reflect those frequencies. And when you get the frequencies to reflect at a high enough frequency, meaning you're shortening the wavelength, you're punching through a gap, basically punching through the speed of light barrier into what we're calling the torsion field frequencies, or the scalar wave frequencies. It's the same spectrum, but these torsion field frequencies, we don't have technology at the moment, or I should say the public eye doesn't have the technology at the moment to detect these higher torsion field frequencies. So they believe it doesn't exist. The way to do that is through organite. And I don't believe the way organite enthusiasts are thinking that the larger the metallic compounds, the stronger it is. That's not the case if you look at it logically from a scientific point of view and actually test it. The smaller the metallic particles and greater the saturation, the higher the frequency range that electromagnetic field is going to transition into, the higher the torsion field frequency is going to be.
Yeah, I got
And
a little.
it literally emits torsion fields.
Yeah, I've got a little organite thing in my car. Somebody sent it to me. I've never tried to mentally make a model for what organite is doing. But if I can rephrase what you just said, you said the organic absorbs frequencies and the metallic reflects it on a general principle.
Yes. It absorbs the electromagnetic frequency.
Electromagnetic.
Yeah, the electromagnetic field gets absorbed by organic compounds, basically carbon-based compounds, and gets reflected by metallic materials. And depending on that metallic material, will also have a determination of the torsion field frequencies that are being reflected and bounced around in it, because metallic compounds each have their own frequency, and so there's a resonance factor that's going to play there.
And you were saying the orgonite was a composite? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, it's a composite of resin and metallic compounds. If you can get into the nanoparticles and do a 50-50 saturation of nanoparticles, the frequency is going to be as high as you could possibly get it. If you were to put, say, monoatomic gold, single element powder in there, there's no telling how high the frequency is going to be.
If you put that in there with the orgonite?
No, if you had that as the metallic compound.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it's the smallest possible metallic surface, monoatomic elements. So you put that in there as with the resin in a 50-50 saturation, resin to metal ratio. There's no telling how high the frequency is going to be, and you can tell the difference in strength and frequency. There are certain things you can do. For instance, you can actually take a bucket of water and take your orgonite composite and place it under the bucket and freeze that bucket. Like put the orgonite and the bucket in a freezer. Orgonite being directly under the bucket, and you open that ice, and you're going to see a tornado in that ice. Yeah, depending on the density of the torsion field, the strength of the torsion field, and the frequency of the torsion field will determine how compacted that white ice is. It's going to show a white ice tornado in the center, surrounded by transparent clear ice.
You've tried that?
No, but I've watched other people do it. I've been waiting until I can. I'm about to build. I've been researching what I'm talking about now. I've been researching for a good few months now. And I'm almost ready to actually go and make my own stuff and do the experiments, but I've watched it done. So I've seen it happen in front of me. And now I'm going to go repeat the experiments.
So you're gonna do some scientific work here?
Yeah.
Sweet.
I'm gonna go play around.
That's good. You gotta have fun, regardless of what's happening. Gotta try and be creative and still live your life, you know?
Right.
We gotta kind of wrap this up, Matt, because I got a couple more today, and it's gonna take some energy. So,
I got you.
Yeah, but thank you so much for coming on. This was fascinating.
Oh, you're welcome.
And yeah, feel free to come back on at some point. This thing I'm doing right now, which is 30 shows in 30 days, is unique, and it's also difficult, and it's also draining on me a little bit, so I probably won't be doing it like this again after this, but I would love to have you back on again at some point.
Yeah, cool deal, man. Let me know.
Yeah, so have a good one, Matt. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.